Deadlock has a whole roster of incredible and inspired heroes that are super fun to play and have amazing personalities. But there is one character who stands out from the rest as kind of a dud. He got a rework recently, and, well, it really hasn't made him any better. As a matter of fact, it has plummeted him to the lowest win rate in the game, and he's also just not picked very much. So, who exactly am I talking about? Well, I am referring to, in my opinion, the most forgettable character in the game, and that is Mirage, who, unfortunately, just has a really boring kit, and while the devs did rework him recently, it doesn't seem to have made him that much of a better character for it. Now, real quick as a disclaimer, I'm not necessarily saying that Mirage is a bad design, nor am I trying to shame anyone who enjoys this character, because at the end of the day, Deadlock's entire character roster is still really freaking good. But it is my belief that Mirage is arguably just the most boring and droll character in this entire game, and I want to explain exactly why. First of all, he's just not very flashy. All of his abilities are very utilitarian, I guess you could call them. He has a gun, and it applies a mark to the enemies that, well, very slowly builds up a damage multiplier on them. And then when the effect expires, or you reach max stats, or you just detonate it manually, it does a big burst of damage. And also, if you max it out, then you'll be able to apply it faster and stun the enemies as a part of the new rework. And this can do a lot of damage for sure, but it's just not super engaging as an ability, because at the end of the day, you're just shooting the enemies, and you're trying to shoot them for an extended period of time, so that way you reach the max multiplier, and there's nothing else really to say about it. And then similarly, the Scarab just fires out a single projectile. If it hits the enemy, you get this small blip of damage where you steal some health from them and add it to your own health pool. And then it just kind of sits there, and it debuffs the enemies, and they take 10% extra damage from you, which is a fine damage amp, but again, it's not very flashy. You hit them once, and then you kind of forget about it, and you just keep shooting them, and then you hope that it's still applied by the time you detonate a max multiplier Jin's mark, which it should be, because it lasts for a fairly long period of time, but again, it's not very engaging. His flashiest ability is, of course, the Tornado, which is a dash forward that makes him immortal and lifts up any enemy that he hits, and then it gives him some bullet evasion afterwards. It's pretty nice as far as movement abilities go, but in terms of its actual effect, it is still a little bland at the end of the day. You use it to dodge an effect, and that's about it. You can't even travel upwards with it. It's just a horizontal dash, and in my opinion, while it is cool, it's just not as exciting as something like Viscus's Puddle Punch or Lash's Grapple or a real meaty movement ability like that. And then, of course, his ultimate is unlike any other ultimate in the game. Most heroes have something that helps them do a ton of damage, or crowd control the enemies, or possibly even both. They're super flashy, and they make a real impact on the battlefield. But not Mirage. Half the time, I forget this guy's ultimate even exists, because you just press the button, and then you click somewhere on the minimap, and then a couple seconds later, you teleport there. Nothing flashy at all, and by default, you don't even get any buffs for it. You have to upgrade it, and, well, this patch at least, the buffs aren't even that exciting anymore. You get a little bit of movement speed and fire rate, and you get a barrier, and that's about it. At least before, it gave you some unstoppable along with it. So Mirage's identity ends up being someone who tries to be a gun carry that also does a big spirit damage with the Jin's mark. You end up building for a little bit of hybrid stuff, going for some spirit damage and empowering your mark, as well as some fire rate to help you build up the marks faster, some cooldown reduction again to build them up faster, and then just stacking debuffs on the enemies as well. And it works okay. Like I said, he is very utilitarian, and it's not exactly a bad playstyle by any stretch of the imagination, but it lacks a lot of the visual impact, flair, and really just identity that a lot of other similar characters have. Take, for example, Haze, who actually has a reasonably similar third ability. It applies marks to the enemies, and the longer you shoot the enemies, the more damage you're going to do to them. But her gun just fires a little bit faster, and in my opinion feels a little bit better to handle, which obviously just makes her feel a little bit more smooth. But then her other abilities are very flashy and add a lot of flair that makes the character more memorable. She can go invisible and run around the map extremely fast, sneaking up on targets and then putting them to sleep and hitting them with a very powerful ultimate that does a ton of damage and looks really cool. And then you have Wraith, another character who got reworked this update, who I would also say has way more identity than Mirage. Her cards are an extremely interesting ability now because you have a chance to get one card of any different suit, or get lucky like I did and get a Joker on your first card. Oh my goodness. And you can throw them out and get a bunch of unique effects. They're a pretty cool projectile to use. She has a teleport that lets her go in any direction, and her ultimate is also way more exciting to use than Mirage. All three of these characters kind of occupy the same archetype in Deadlock, where they are gun carries, and at least in Wraith and Mirage's case, they can also do a pretty big amount of spirit damage at the same time. They're really just here to do a ton of damage output. But while Haze and Wraith have really fun and engaging abilities that are bold and just exciting to use, Mirage is just shooting the enemies slowly and slowly building up the mark and throwing out his first ability. That's just one little beetle guy, and then maybe throwing in a tornado just for some flair. I think the main draw for Mirage players, besides having one of the best ultimates in the game for macro purposes, and also having a useful movement ability that lets them dodge attacks and just maneuver around the battlefield, is the fact that you can get some really nice burst damage on this character. If you hit a max level mark, oh my goodness, that is disgusting. But I think it also lends to Mirage being a very difficult character to balance. If we take a look at StatLocker to see the win rates of various characters this update, you'll notice that Mirage is kind of having a bad time. So we have a bunch of the usual suspects in S tier like McGinnis and 7, Calico as well getting super buffed this patch, and Wraith is chilling in A tier. She is doing very well this update. Haze as well got a small boost to her win rate this update. She's chilling in B tier, 51% win rate. And then we have to start scrolling. And keep scrolling. And keep scrolling. And keep scrolling, only to find Mirage at the very bottom here. My head's in the way. Yeah, he's right here. And his win rate has just plummeted through the floor. It was already pretty bad before the update. On February 26th, his win rate was 47.9%. And then, on March 5th, his win rate was 42.5%. And now, it is a 38.7% win rate. That's really catastrophically bad. And bear in mind, these are Eternus games. These are not people who are bad at the game playing Mirage and failing to use him. These are, in some cases, Mirage experts failing to make Mirage work, even after the rework, which was supposed to make him just feel a lot better to play. However, there was a time where Mirage was the absolute king of Deadlock because he was doing a crazy amount of damage with the Jin's Mark, and his very useful tools for evading attacks and teleporting across the map were very strong. And certainly, with the rework, they have in some ways gotten stronger. Traveler is now able to teleport you literally anywhere on the map, whereas previously you were limited to targeting just players. So that's pretty cool, and if you max out the Dust Devil, you do get a second tornado, so you can cast it once, and then wait a couple of seconds, and then cast it again. All of this is very powerful, but it seems like, at least on the damage front right now, he is failing to keep up with other characters like Wraith and Haze, who, as you saw, have much better win rates. Even though Fire Scarabs now gives him a 20% damage amp, and they upgraded the tier 2 of Jin's Mark to do even more damage, he's still just not hitting the same. I think this is because even though he does definitely do a pretty good amount of damage with these marks, other characters just got buffed more than him, and so comparatively his damage is still worse. It takes a very long time to build up that mark. You can cleanse it with items like Dispel Magic, and a lot of characters got their own debuff removers on their abilities this update, and so all of that means that you can potentially just not take damage from the mark, and then at that point, Mirage is just a guy with a gun, and his gun isn't even the best gun in the game, far from it. Comparatively, if we take a look at another mark-based character like Haze, well, she's just able to build up the marks a lot faster than Mirage, and so even if someone cleanses her marks, she can just keep shooting them again, and she'll be back up to max marks far faster than Mirage can. And it's kind of the same way with Infernus. If you cleanse that DOT, he can still get the fire back up on you reasonably quickly. Whereas with Mirage, even if you do have the cooldown upgrades online, as I do, well, here's the first mark, here's the second mark, here's the third mark, here's the fourth mark, and finally there's the max mark, which is just astronomically longer than what Haze and Infernus have to do. And Infernus still isn't even that good. He's been struggling for a while now, and even right now, his win rate is just 46.6% at Eternus Plus. Another thing that I believe leads to Mirage just being not very fun and also not very good is his lack of playstyle diversity. Let's take a look at some of the other characters in Mirage's niche again. Haze does have some playstyle diversity. She is able to play obviously a very powerful gun build, but plenty of people also enjoy imbuing a bunch of spirit damage onto her and playing a spirit sort of playstyle where you hit them with a bunch of damage for the sleep dagger and maybe even throw in some punches. Is it the meta playstyle? No, of course not. But it is a playstyle that conceptually makes a lot of sense, and if Valve wanted to encourage Haze to do it, all they would have to do is just buff the sleep dagger a little bit. Infernus can, of course, play a gun-based playstyle where he shoots the enemies and builds up a lot of damage with Afterburn, but you can also play around his dash, which is actually my preferred way to play him. You dash in, you pop your ult, and you just do a ton of damage with this thing. And it's really cool and really effective. Wraith has kind of been optimized to the point that her spirit and gun playstyles are effectively the same, and you'll see a lot of people getting the same sort of spirit and gun items on her. But theoretically, you could build her more for the gun and building around full auto, or you could try to play more around her cards, getting items like rapid recharge if you wanted to. There is at least some room for different items there. Meanwhile, Mirage. Well, what abilities can you build around? His main damage dealer is his Jin's Mark. Okay, that's cool. We can build around applying that faster. The Fire Scarabs, they don't really do much damage. If you max them out, then you can do 120 max health steal, and you have X2 spirit scaling, so you could get like Boundless Spirit and try to make them steal more damage, and they're gonna do, you know, about 300 damage like this. Max level, we can do, yeah, almost 400 damage with this. That's pretty cool. But you can only do that once per target, so, I mean, you can try and do 376 damage to everyone on the team, but, like, you're not going to kill anybody with that, so you can't exactly build for the Fire Scarabs. And then the Tornado, you could try to play some sort of crowd control build, maybe get an Echo Shard on the Tornado, and max it out and then do, like, BAM! Bam! And then Echo Shard it, and then bam! And then bam! And that's a lot of crowd control, but once again, I mean, you're doing some damage, but it's not a crazy amount of damage, and it's just not very effective at the end of the day. For a character to have playstyle diversity, their alternate playstyles need to be at least somewhat effective. Spirit Haze with the daggers and the punches can do thousands of damage with her burst, and similarly, Infernus is able to do crazy DPS with his Flame Dash, but Mirage doesn't really have that with his other two playstyles. And then what, are you going to build around the ultimate? Oh boy, I sure can't wait to build around teleporting. And then, what do I do when I get there? Well, if I don't build around my Jin's Mark on my gun, I'm going to do nothing once I get there. So, that's kind of off the table too. And then when his one play style just isn't competitively viable compared to all of the other characters in his niche, like Haze, like Wraith, like Infernus, then people are just going to forget about him. There's not really a reason to come back to him because the other characters just have more fun abilities at the end of the day. But then when he's strong, Oh boy, is he oppressive, because this Jin's Mark will hit like a truck, and he does have the ability to out-macro most characters in the game with the Traveler. He can kind of be in two places at once. You see him on one walker, and then a couple seconds later you see him on the other walker, ready to fight you there. So that is very powerful, and again, it leads to him being very hard to balance. So what can we do to make Mirage better? How can we pull him out of this win rate rut, where he is currently the lowest win rate character in the game, and how can we make his abilities more engaging to play around? Well, that's where I would love to hear from you in the comments section down below, especially if you are a Mirage main. I would love to hear if anything I've said today in this video is off base, and any ideas you have to make this character more exciting. But of course, I don't want to put all of the burden on you to come up with ideas here, so let me discuss a few ideas of my own. First of all, I do think that they went in the right direction with the Fire Scarabs this update by turning it into a regular charged ability. The previous function of this ability was just flat out strange, so it's great that they have cleared that up, but Fire Scarabs are still a very uninteractive ability. You put it on the enemy once, you get some health, and then yeah, you just don't do anything. You just shoot them, and you do more damage, and I mean, yeah, it's helpful, but it's just so boring. And like I mentioned, you can't exactly build that much around them, and if you are building around the Fire Scarabs, then you're probably just building around the Jin's Mark anyways, with Spirit Power and whatnot. So it's just not a very engaging ability, so you could definitely make the Fire Scarabs more interactive by potentially adding some kind of stacking mechanic where you can hit the enemies with multiple Scarabs to increase some kind of buff or steal more health or anything like that. It would encourage you to hit multiple Fire Scarabs in the middle of a fight, which is just more interactive. Now, what this buff or functionality would actually look like can vary wildly. It could be some damage over time, it could be some max health steal over time that builds up kind of like Shiv's daggers, it could be a stacking damage amp similar to Paradox's bombs, or it could be some other effect entirely. And you could even add more functionality with the upgrades here. Perhaps for the tier 2 you get a stacking lifesteal amp versus the target, or something like that. But I want some reason to use Fire Scarabs more than once, maybe twice in a fight if they cleanse it. Putting it on the enemy and then just sitting there and forgetting about it is just boring. Tornado is already a pretty good ability, so I don't think they really need to do much here. It's already pretty fun to use, and I especially love it when he's low HP or whatever the trigger is, and he just yells, "Tornado!" That's really fun. Probably the most memorable thing about him, besides the fact that he wants to buy Wyoming. Now, the Jin's Mark is a very unique ability, because there's nothing else really like it in the game where you stack it up on somebody, and every time you get a stack, it multiplies your damage exponentially. That is pretty fun, and I think, again, they've done a pretty fine job of reworking it this update. Except for the fact that obviously he's still not doing enough damage to be competitive with Wraith and other characters. You could increase that, but again, it is always difficult because if it does too much damage, then it just feels horrendous to play against. And also, of course, if the enemies debuff remove it, or they use something like Viscus's Cube to just tank it, then Mirage feels like he's doing absolutely nothing. So, giving Mirage some kind of extra functionality that benefits him while the mark is just on the enemy but it hasn't been detonated yet, could be a good way to make him more consistent. Perhaps this could be where his stacking damage amp is, for example, where maybe he does more gun damage to the target based on the amount of marks they have. That might be too similar to Haze. You could do something else, and if that ends up being too strong in conjunction with the burst, then you could nerf the burst. I will also say, stunning the enemy on max marks probably isn't the right solution. It already does well over 1,000 damage, sometimes 2,000 damage by the late game. Stunning them too, that just feels oppressive. And finally, Traveler. I mean, it is functional, but it's just so boring otherwise. Like, you just teleport. And, I mean, the buffs are just not that exciting. And this visual is also really boring. Like, nothing about this is fun. It's practical, it's tactical, but it's not memorable in the slightest, and when you compare it to some actual, real, beefy ultimates like Lash's ult or Dynamo's ult, Dude, I'm falling asleep just thinking about Traveler right now. So, we need to do something to make this more enticing to upgrade, and also really beef up the visual flair of this to make it more thrilling to teleport. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, people just aren't really upgrading this. And this build that I used to test Mirage the other day, it's the last ability to even get 1 point. And you'll notice a common trend throughout most of these builds here is that the ultimate is saved for last. 90% of people here are just, yeah, they're just upgrading it last. They're not even putting a single point into this. They're upgrading every other ability first before they do something with the Traveler. So give us more of a reason to actually upgrade this. Make the buffs more unique. Maybe put the cooldown reduction a little bit sooner or something like that. I want to have a reason to teleport across the map more frequently, and I want to get something else more than just a slight fire rate boost for doing so. The previous ultimate did have more interesting and engaging buffs than this. It gave Unstoppable to Mirage, and it could also share the buffs with the teammates that he teleported to. Now, he can't teleport to teammates, but he could still, in an area around where he's teleporting, give his team some buffs, or he could just give himself more selfish, powerful buffs after teleporting. I mean, come on, if Lady Geist is able to get frickin' 60 spirit power, 40% fire rate, and 50% spirit res, we can come up with something more exciting for Mirage. But let me know what you think about Mirage in the comments section down below. I played him recently with his rework, and, I mean, I like what they did with the Scarabs for the most part, at least with the charged ability stuff, and Dust Devil is cool, but I still found myself just completely unenthused with this character. And while he is still a fine design, clearly, he's not very strong right now, and clearly he could just be a little more engaging, and that way, maybe more people would play him. But maybe I'm horrendously off base. Of course, you'll let me know about that in the comments section. If you found this video to be interesting, then of course make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future videos from me. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next time. Peace out.